Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman back with you for the what is it, 263 Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Zoom call, otherwise known as Greep. We are really great to be with you today. It's got to be a hugely important talk. We're starting with a discussion of what's happening in Maga land. Then we're going to go to some specifics in Ohio and Maryland with some people who've been booted. At least one person has been booted from the Trump regime. And in the second hour, we're going to have a very special discussion for Earth Day. Earth Day is coming up on the 22nd week from Wednesday, and we're going to lay down package, a tape that will go nationwide over the Pacifica Radio Network and elsewhere. We got some really amazing guests and some amazing territory to cover, given the nature of the war going on in Iran and its effect on energy and the environment worldwide. So we're actually starting today with 41 people. Is Mike or our guests on with us here for to talk about Mega?
Well, we do have Morgan Harper here.
Okay, and Morgan Harper, we'll start with you. You are somewhere in the wilds of Ohio, is that right? Hey,
Yes.
how
Wait
you
for it to
doing?
unmute. Okay, now I've unmuted. Yes.
Yes. Now, there's some wild stuff going on with energy in Ohio, and also with the various Senate races. Well, there is one U.S. Senate race. We are, of course, nonprofit, so we don't take positions on these races. But what is happening? I saw that there's been a change in the evaluation of the Senate race in Ohio, and we're going to come to that in a minute. Morgan, well, a few minutes. Morgan, can you stick with us for a while? We've just been joined by Jennie Gage, who's going to talk to us about MAGA, and we're also going to be joined with a reporter from Raw Story who did a piece on MAGA, what's happening in MAGA, which is really earth-shattering. Jennie Gage, are you with us? Jennie Gage, sign in. I will say I just watched a Christian right-wing broadcast, and it's the Charlie Kirk network. I guess there's a Charlie Kirk network out there, and a guy named Joshua Hames was basically pulling his. I don't know, Jennie Gage, you're with us. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Joshua Hames, but he was on the Charlie Kirk network pulling his hair about this cartoon or picture or drawing or AI. There's got to be a name for an AI image, maybe AI image, where Trump is basically portrayed as Jesus healing somebody in a sick bay. Now, Trump has since claimed, and he posted this, by the way. This is not some random out there in the internet kind of image. This was posted at the real Donald Trump, um, uh, whatever you call it. There, oh my God. Oh my God. To see this is mind-boggling. Jennie Gage, have you seen this? You are our correspondent from Magaland, and you've left that particular tribe. And we've talked to you many times before. You're truly great, and it's wonderful to have you with us.
Thanks.
Have you seen this image? And even I, as a Buddhist, was like, whoa, what is that? Can you comment on this image of Donald Trump with our Radio Land? I think many people out there in Radio Land have seen this. How did you react? Have you seen that?
I have. First of all, thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to hear from Morgan, and you guys are just amazing. You're one of my favorite places to hang out on Mondays. It's just a wealth of information. I always walk away after listening just so enriched. So thank you. I saw it, and my reaction, I was MAGA for 48 years of my life, and I just don't understand why this is even a story because it's just 1 year ago that Donald Trump posted the picture of himself, AI generated as the Pope and had a whole bunch of tweets around that, how he was more powerful than the Pope. There's a photo of Donald Trump that I don't think it's AI generated. I think it was actually a painting, but I'm not sure exactly, with the finger of God reaching down, kind of like the Sistine Chapel, like Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, and the finger of God reaches down through the clouds and it flicks the bullet away from hitting Trump's ear. And Trump has talked extensively about that bullet being, bounced away from killing him by the power of God. And we've had so much other stuff. So even in his last campaign, when I was still MAGA sympathizing and was definitely a Trump voter in the last election that he lost, there was a piece of artwork that I loved that I had my social medias of Jesus standing behind President Trump. Well, he was just, candidate Trump at that point. He was in a suit and his classic, horrible misshapen red tie. And Jesus is glowing and he has his hands on Trump's shoulders. And it's just so beautiful. I loved that picture. So this is not new. I don't know if people who aren't MAGA are just waking up to this whole theme. But a couple of things going on here. First of all, Trump for years has been surrounded by people blowing smoke up his ass about what an amazing person he is. That he's
We have
chosen.
to watch our, Jenny, we have to watch our
Can we not cuss on your channel?
It's okay. Don't worry about it. But
Sorry.
that was not a 4-letter word. So
No, that's a donkey.
yeah, right, exactly. And by the way, we're joined by Alexandria Jacobson. Alexandria, are you with us? You interviewed Jennie Gage for a while ago. You're a reporter from Raw Story, and you wrote a big piece about MAGA, and we are in our nonprofit mode here, just examining what's going on with MAGA, which to me, as a historian, is pretty much unprecedented. It appears to be that the MAGA movement is shattering in a million pieces, and certainly Donald Trump has done nothing to calm things down. I mean, you, Jenny, you're sort of have left the MAGA fold, but when
100%, I now fight it daily. That's what I do full time.
Right, and Alexandria, you're an ace reporter, terrific writer, by the way, and you have been joined, I guess, by Marjorie Taylor Greene of all people, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and who's the guy with the big following, the conspiracy guy. I mean, Donald has and Trump has attacked all these people, which I don't recall any instance of American history where a major politician has attacked the major spokespeople of his own movement. So, Jenny, can you comment on that? And then Alexandria and Morgan, of course, we know you're waiting by, so please stay with us.
I think the bigger question with everything, and this is all the same thing. So the photo and the little fight that he's all of a sudden in with Pope Leo and the Catholic Church and everybody, and the whole the post where he tweeted something about Allah on Easter. Everything that we're seeing is a 79-year-old man in cognitive decline who, again, has had smoke blown up his arse by people for decades and decades. When he was like, when he was developing in New York, there were already people kissing up to him in major ways. So this is someone who's lived a very specific life where he's been kept in a bubble and he's bought into all the grandiosity that people have showered him with. So that's really dangerous. The bigger question isn't, why did this man post this? What's going on with him? It's what's going on with the American system that we're not able to eject this man from office. We don't have a monarchy. One of the reasons why our Constitution is set up the way it is so that should we get a bad player in office, especially in the executive branch, we're supposed to have brakes on that. We're supposed to have checks and balances. The story with all of this is, where are those checks and balances? Why has this man not been ejected from office, held accountable? Why is he there? To me, that's the real story. Also, new numbers really quick, and I'm going to hop off and let all you amazing people discuss this. Did you see the first quarter Gallup research that only 39% of American voters right now are identifying as Republican or Republican-leaning independents, with 49% identifying as Democrats or Democrat-leaning independents, compared to just 2 years ago when it was a 45-45 split. So that's huge. There's a 10-point spread now. Less than 39% of Americans now identify right now today as Republican or Republican leaning independents. And 40%, when they're given three choices, are you Republican, Democrat, or independent? 40% of people say they're nothing. They don't want anything to do with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They're just independent. So big numbers
Well, listen,
out of
you have
Gallup
to
today.
figure also, of course, you can look at it the other way. We still, after all this gone through, we still have 39% in favor of the Republican Party or the MAGA. Just remember one thing always: during the American Revolution, a third of the people in the colonies supported the king all the way through. There was never a drop below a third of the Tories supporting people in the U.S. Well, what became the U.S. But Jennie, I know you've got to go to the orthodontist. Your teeth look great, so it must be your kid.
I'm taking the teenagers. It's teenage orthodontic day today. So,
But is this shattering inside the MAGA movement? Is it for real, or is it
yes.
just, yeah? I
I'm
mean,
part of the leadership of Leaving MAGA. I work with the incredible Rich Logis over there, who he's just everything that he's doing. I'm a tiny little bit. I'm a soft space for people to land sometimes, but it's incredible the influx of emails and people reaching out to us on my own platforms. I reach millions a month, and because I'm ex MAGA, I tell my ex MAGA story daily. Because of that, I have so many people reaching out, and it's incredible the uptick in stories of people right now and it's funny, they fall into a couple categories like, I didn't really like Trump to begin with, and now I'm really starting to question everything. The war in Iran has been a big turning point for so many people, and it's mostly they don't want their kids to be drafted. They have friends and children in the military, and they don't want them to be swept up in this war. They don't like the dehumanization of the people of Iran. We don't understand why we're in this war. Gas prices are up. Everything's falling to pieces. So I do hear from a lot of people just like not even admitting that they had voted so many times, but I didn't love him that much to begin with. Like, I'm out of here. And then a lot of people who are just furious. Those people like myself, where I was heavily invested in all of the alt-right pipelines and in Donald Trump himself. I'm so angry that until he's out of office and this all collapses, I will never stop talking about MAGA and fighting against him. So there are certainly a lot of people reaching out to me right now who are just like me, who are like fired up, and we cannot believe that we were duped by this man. So absolutely, it's 100% real. Now what we need to do is carve out that safe space that they land, because the Democratic Party is a little bit in shambles, and we have Eric Swal, what's his last name, who, governor of California, that's a big deal. We have a lot of controversies going on. We also just have a lack of leadership and a little bit of people looking like they're chaotic. So now somebody needs to carve out that safe space for everyone to land, so that as voters leave MAGA, as we're disillusioned with everything, we have that energy moving into the next campaign so that we can unseat these people who are currently in power.
Wow. Which is more impactful at this point, the Iran war or the Epstein files?
At this point, it's the Iran war, Iran. That's what I hear from the majority of people. The Epstein files, I almost feel like is kind of white noise for people because we've been in this holding pattern with it for so long. I'm actually on tomorrow with Dr. Nola Haynes talking about that with the panel of incredible political commentators. So I'll share that link with you so that you can give that a listen. We're going to dissect the Epstein files and what it means for everybody right now. The Melania thing last week was definitely blindsiding. There's so much to what's going on there. But on a daily basis, I'm not worried about the Epstein files for me. I'm trying to keep my daughter safe in other ways. I have 3 sons between the ages of 17 and 29. The war in Iran, and I live in a military base community where I have tons of friends, single moms and stuff, who are in the army, who'd be deployed, and just threat to our safety. I'm sure that a lot of people wake up every day just feeling a little bit unsettled that Iran does have incredible state-of-the-art weaponry, and we're over there, doing what we're doing. So definitely the war in Iran, number one, everything that I hear from everyone that's leaving MAGA. And the second thing is just the economy. Donald Trump promised us that he was for the working class, and nobody's seeing that. Gas prices have escalated. Now we're in this war, and that war is kind of the linchpin to the entire American economy falling to pieces in the minds of everyday Americans.
Wow. So basically, you got 3 things going. You have the Epstein files, which maybe old news by now. You've got the Iran war and you've got the economy. And then in my world, we have the 94 nuclear plants, which Putin is attacking in Ukraine. And we're going to deal with that in the second hour because I'm terrified by that. I mean, if he's worried about nuclear weapons in Iran, what about the nuclear power plants here in the United States? Jennie Gage, it is always really great to have you. If you'll come back next week with Alexandria, because we need to keep our finger on the pulse, if it has one, of the MAGA movement. But I have to say, as a historian, this crack up of the MAGA movement is unprecedented. And I wish I could remember the guy of the conspiracy theory guy. Somebody yell out his name, who's always who talked about
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones. There you go. No wonder I couldn't remember. Alex Jones. For him to attack Alex Jones, I mean, really, what do you make of it? I mean, is it just plain psychotic, Jenny? I mean, a politician does not attack their own movement.
But that's not the question. Once again, not to argue, but let's just refocus on the question is why do we have a system that doesn't eject that person from office? Where's the checks and balances? Where's the brakes on this guy? That's the question.
Right. Well, then you need to talk to Jamie Raskin. We'll have to have him back on.
Crazy people are going to come. Crazy people are going to go. What are we going to do with the crazy people? How do we get them out of there? So anyway, Adelaide Grijalva, who I had the incredible opportunity of sitting down and chatting with 2 weeks ago in a women's leadership forum, said to say hi to all of you. So she sent her love, hugs and kisses. She's out there fighting for us. So
well, listen, between now and next week, you need to read the history of Watergate because, I lived through that. Many of us, not all of you are old enough, but, and that was a fascinating thing. And in the end, it was the Republicans who threw Nixon out. Howard Baker came to the Oval Office and said, Dick, you got to go. Now, who's going to do that for Trump?
I'd do it. Anybody else raise your hand?
Okay, I'll buy your ticket to Washington.
If only we had that power. Thank you, everybody, listening from my pocket while I drive to orthodontics. Amazing.
And we'll see you next week, I hope. Thank you so much, Jenny. Okay, we're going to turn now to Alexandria Jacobson. Alexandria is a hotshot reporter for Raw Story, to which I just subscribed. And she has interviewed Jenny before and has up at the at Raw Story now a piece on MAGA about exactly what we're talking about. You certainly remember Alex Jones's name, along with Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the other Candace Owens, the other stellar pillars of the right wing. I'm not going to characterize. Tell us what's going on here.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it was great to see Jenny. She was generous, as you mentioned, generous enough to share her story with me. And she's one of the many folks in this Leaving MAGA movement I've had the opportunity to profile and really kind of get a sense of what's going on with many folks who are hardcore Trump supporters changing their minds. So, and I think that's really, what you're seeing, these names you mentioned, Alex Jones, Candace Owens, those folks, of course, are really central to people in MAGA, right? And their information sources. And really, as a lot of people I interviewed, they say, they've kind of created an echo chamber when you're in MAGA, right? And but when you see the president start to have contradictions, that's where people end up, these breaks are coming in, right? Because
did you just
he said something else.
Yeah, go ahead. You're free or
you're freezing. We're gonna have to cut your video.
People, they say, this break from MAGA. That's why it's happening. It's the contradiction. It's can you see me?
No,
Yeah.
Go ahead. We when you have an audio problem, we cut the video. That makes it.
No, I'm sorry about that.
No problem. Not your problem. Just go ahead, please.
Anyway, so yeah, that's essentially kind of what we're seeing. Essentially, when I talk to folks in the Leaving MAGA movement, is President Trump is having a lot of contradictions with, what they've heard and believed from their media sources.
Well, it's interesting, and tell me what you think. Jenny basically implied or said outright that the war in Iran seems to be having a bigger impact than the Epstein files. And, a lot of people believe that Trump got us into the war in Iran to divert, in part at least, to divert attention from the Epstein files. You got this 13, well, this woman who's codenamed Katie Johnson, who's laid out a devastating interview saying that Trump sexually abused her when she was 13, for God's sakes. And people think, she was just getting to the top of the media heap here when Trump attacked Iran. Now, a lot of people believe that that's why he attacked Iran, to divert attention from Katie Johnson. But according to Jennie, the war in Iran has had a bigger impact on his base than even the Epstein files. Alexandria Jacobson, what do you think about that?
I'd say that reflects what I've been hearing from talking with folks. I will also add, or I guess echo what Jennie said, the economy and affordability is just really something that is causing people to lose their faith in President Trump and see a little bit of a different side there. So the tariffs, for instance, I've interviewed a Republican farmer who said, was full on Trump supporter, and then just how that affected his business really made him turn on the president. So yeah, there's a lot of factors at play right now, and I look a lot at how the Trump administration policies affect everyday people, and I think the Iran particularly. With President Trump saying, being very against when he was campaigning endless wars, and people then see Iran and they see Venezuela and they say this is contradictory. This is not what you campaigned on. And
wow, Morgan, Alexandria, you still with us here? Let's go to Lynn Finerman. Lynn, you put in the chat that what you're hearing is similar, that the war in Iran is having a bigger impact on Trump than on the Epstein files have been. What do you think about that?
Actually, I put in quite the opposite.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had posted a one post on Facebook about the Epstein thing, about the Melania photographs after she, came out and said, I never met Jeffrey Epstein. And there were over 300 likes, and there were over 6,000 people who checked out my post. That tells me that people are not going to forgive that. They're not going to just let it go. Plus, there are lawsuits coming from the survivors themselves. And I think it's a 1-2 punch. I think that it's about, the integral personality traits of Taco, who has absolutely no morals when it comes to people who are defenseless. But when he gets in front of some guns, or he has to put others in front of some guns, he doesn't know what to do.
It's mind-boggling. Alexandria, are you back with us? Alexandria Jacobson?
yep, I'm still here.
Good. So that's a radio broadcaster, Lynn Finerman, who's got some big fingers on the pulse.
Yeah.
It's an interesting. I mean, look, you've got a guy in the White House who's facing two gargantuan situations here. One thing about Richard Nixon, and I can say this definitively, there was never a sex scandal surrounding Richard Nixon. I mean, the joke was he and his wife, made love twice, and they had 2 daughters, and that was it. That never a hint of that with Richard Nixon. I think a lot of people would have welcomed it, actually. But let's talk to Charisse. Is that your name? Charisse Sebastian? Charisse. Please. You've got Alexandria Jacobson with us from Raw Story and Morgan Harper in the Wings. What did you want to contribute here, Charisse?
Well, what I wanted to contribute was the recent loss by Orban.
Oh, yes. Let's talk about that. That's a very big deal.
Okay, that was a huge loss for
Well, hold on.
Orban.
Let's get to that when we don't
no,
have a
because
guest talk about something else.
Let's Alexander, are you with us for the hour? Because
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
you're going to want to talk about Orban as well. I think a lot of people, and Mike, you're right to talk about this, but we're going to go overseas when we talk about nuclear power too. But I think that correct me if I'm wrong, Alexandria and others, but I think that the Orban's loss is considered in many ways a MAGA loss. I mean, wasn't Orban considered kind of the MAGA leader of Hungary?
Oh, yeah, I have absolutely been seeing that this is, viewed as a loss and a hit to the MAGA community. And as we know, Orban was certainly very strongly backed by President Trump. So I think it's just another example of the weakening of the MAGA movement that, that reflects what's happening here.
Well, Therese, did you want to comment on that? Are you still with us, Therese? Well, that's Vice
Yeah,
President.
I'm here.
Yes, I mean, is that what you wanted to raise?
Yeah,
Therese?
well, that's part of it.
Go ahead.
It was a huge loss, not only for Orban, but also Trump/Vance, since they had invested so much effort into it. However, it is also a warning sign to Democrats
Tell
that
us
they have to stop thinking conventionally. I've been saying that since Hillary Clinton in 2016. They
Well,
have
how
to
do you
stop
mean?
thinking conventionally.
What do you mean?
Well, let me explain. I posted the URL to an article in the chat, and let me quote from the end of the article that it takes a special kind of candidate to carry a political project like this, and probably no one likely to win popularity contests with the members of a conventional party committee or legislative caucus, whether it be Trump, Musk, Mark Carney, Keir Starmer, Peter Magyar, who just won in Hungary, Emmanuel Macron, or Giorgia Meloni. The one thing they all have in common is they think unconventionally. And if Democrats want to take the hint, they should give a closer look at the leaders frustrating their peers in Washington and defying their home state political bosses, and less time measuring the applause meters at various special interest conventions and donor retreats.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The strongest successor to Trump from either party would not be a leader who's a ladder climber awaiting his or her turn, but rather someone ready to claim the role through disruption and combat. That's what it's going to take.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment on Hungary and tie it in with MAGA? It seems to be a big shocker. What was the nature of the guy who beat him?
He was a former Orban aide and member of the same party, and he became very disaffected by what Orban was doing, his authoritarian moves, going from a liberal Democrat, so-called Democrat, to ultra-right, conservative, authoritarian Putin sycophant.
Whoa. Okay. Alexandria, what do you see of the MAGA movement here, the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, obviously most of my reporting has been focused on folks here in the United States, but I think from what I'm hearing from folks is that there is just really so much weakness and fracturing in the party, and that there's such an opportunity for Democrats, right now and going into November to really capitalize on this and using it as a moment to before, Donald Trump isn't going to be around forever, right? But before the MAGA movement, it's not going to go anywhere. And so, before people potentially, leave MAGA or go somewhere even more farther right, there's an opportunity to pull them in and talk to them and have them kind of join this kind of see a different side and maybe be a part of that kind of support community.
Okay. We got Sandy Bozenius in Ohio and Morgan Harper. We'll get to you also in Ohio. Sandy, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I lived in Hungary from 94 to 95. I was teaching in the international school. And so I was there when the rise of Orban. He's been there since then. Actually, I think he's been there since even before. And he was considered this, bright young guy who was taking on the Soviet Union, which, by the time I got there was out. I didn't really know much about Hungarian politics. I was teaching Hungarian history. I didn't know much about the politics, but neither did Hungarians at the time because it was all so new. But I can tell you, Soros had this wonderful Central European university that he financed, and it was amazing. It was drawing scholars from all over. That's one thing that he was forced out of the country when Viktor Orban came in power, and lots of things like that. So took over the press. Of course, it's on treatment of refugees. And at that time, I was working with refugees, and it just got worse after I left. So if there's one little point I'd like to make, other than that I was there at the beginning, is that I see what's happening is a people's movement around the world. I'm just not as inclined to look at the politician. Of course, we have the politicians are our leaders who are chosen ones. Hopefully we're choosing them ourselves and not the money. But I think we need to be working with people around the world rather, and develop those kinds of connections, because the people want the good for everyone, whereas the leaders who get in charge in this money-fueled world end up not representing our interests. That's it. Thanks.
Well, one of my questions, and we want to talk about this before the second hour a bit, is with a guy like Orban in power, how do you protect the elections? I mean, Trump has been very explicit in attacking our electoral system. How do you, with a guy like Orban in power, vote him out? I mean, there's a real question, I think, to a lot of people. Carla Sand in Minnesota, did you want to chime in on that?
Not on that, no. I don't know if the election is over yet or not, but I have something I want to ask all those speakers who've been talking about, well, what kind of shambles the Democratic Party is in. Not that I'm a lover of the Democratic Party, but is it because progressives versus liberals or conservatives, or is it because they don't speak about issues? They're making a hell of a lot of money. Somebody's financing it to the millions of dollars. I think it might be in shambles, but maybe not. I'm not hearing what they think is the reason.
Alexandria, and then Mike Hirsch, and then we'll go to Morgan Harper in Ohio, where God knows we have a Democratic Party with some challenges. But Alexandria, did you want to comment? Then we'll go to Mike, and then Morgan.
Sure. Something I could just add is, I guess what I've heard from some of the folks I've interviewed, and someone that comes to mind is Sean Harris, who is a Democrat who ran for Marjorie Taylor Greene's former seat. And, I feel like some of the criticism I keep hearing is, wanting Democrats to really, go hard on issues, I think. And I think, someone like him, it's a little harder when you're running as a Democrat in a highly Republican area. But I think that's kind of the main criticism I've been hearing. But I think by focusing on affordability is something that I think is resonating. And again, that's part of the reason why a lot of folks have been leaving the MAGA party. I think that is somewhere where Democrats have been resonating. And I also did a story, for instance, it's a state level race, but many of you probably saw that Emily Gregory in Florida, where Mar-a-Lago is, won. She's a Democrat. She won that seat there. And I had done a preview story of that and just how Democrats have been flipping a lot of seats at the state level and hoping that's a bellwether for what's to come in November. And so I think she really talked about how she hammered on affordability and kind of making life better for folks that live in her district. And that's resonated in somewhere where Trump, of course, is highly associated. And I think I do a lot of talking with folks on both sides. And when I talk to the Democrats, there's a lot of optimism and hope that, by hammering those kind of issues and making their points clear, that they can actually flip some seats. And, going back to the MTG's former district, when she ran there, first in 2020, she took 75% of the vote. When Sean Harris just he lost, but he ended up the Republican there only got 57%. So the people I talked to down in even very deep red Georgia, they've told me that the MAGA base there is cracking a bit and that there's an opportunity for Democrats to really gain more votes and supporters.
Okay, let's see. Mike Hirsch, and then we'll go to Morgan Harper and then Nathan Taylor. Mike Hirsch, go ahead.
Well, it's a very good question. How come the Democratic Party isn't as responsive to the voters as it should be and could be? And it also goes to the amazing information that Jennie was presenting us. That and one of the things that she mentioned on her video today that I was watching is that even though Trump is extremely unpopular, he's still more popular than the Democratic Party. And that's something people need to wrap their mind around. I don't think that the Chuck Schumers of the world have gotten it into their head that as unpopular as Trump is, Chuck Schumer himself is much less popular than Trump. The Democratic Party is unpopular. And the reason is that the Democratic Party has been kind of schizophrenic for quite a long time, where the base has been anti-war, has been pro-union, has been pro-environmental, and a bunch of other different things that are very important to the base, as well as civil rights, women's rights, gay rights, and a bunch of other things that we hear about all the time. And what the Democratic Party has done in recent generations, at least since Richard Nixon won in '72, and definitely since Reagan, the Democrats have been chasing the same corporate donors as the Republicans, and they've always come in second. It's like the Democratic Party is happy being like the side piece that gets to spend a few weekends here and there, but the corporations spend all their love with the Republicans because they know that's who they can count on. The Democrats get the sloppy seconds, they get whatever the leftovers. That's not enough for the Democratic Party to be a governing party. But the consultants who make a lot of money out of giving bad advice to candidates, they get paid based on how much money the corporate donors give them. So they're happy to get the second most amount of money. And the other thing that's compounding this whole situation is that in primaries, a lot of people are trying to run in primaries and they get completely deluged with spending, negative spending, attack ads from people who just don't want them to have anything that maybe forces corporations and billionaires to pay their fair share in taxes. They want to defend the environment from nuclear radiation and pollution and this, that, and the other, break up monopolies and all these other things. So what we have is a vicious cycle where the more powerful people get more wealth and more power, which they then use to buy up more politicians and rig more primaries. The only way out of it is like what we just saw in Hungary. The people need to pour out into the electorate and vote in numbers for good candidates, in numbers that are too big to steal, that's too big to buy off, and they can't rig the primaries and then rig the elections. But we're about 3 or 4 steps away from seizing control of our democracy, and right now it's in the hands of the wealthy and the unscrupulous.
Well, which party is which? I guess the wealthy and the unscrupulous, that's a bipartisan, nonpartisan category. Thank you for that, Mike. Very, very well stated. Morgan Harper, you're in Ohio, the belly of the beast, the heart of it all. And I don't know what other parts of the anatomy we would refer to Ohio, but what's your feeling of the MAGA movement there and of what's going on politically?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sunny. And I got to shout out Sandy, who's also in Columbus. And I think I've seen a couple other Ohio folks who have logged on. So, just to give like one line of background on my personal journey, because a lot of what has been said resonates for me and why I find myself doing the things I do currently. I had kind of like done the policy thing and then sort of naively thought Democrats were looking out for us. And if you're elected and you're a Democrat, then you're going to be doing the right thing. And then kind of realized, of course, that that is BS, but I will keep the language appropriate, Sunny. And if we're going to change that, then we have to start getting different kinds of Democrats elected and have more people-driven power. And so if folks have been following along some of the things I've done in Ohio, I have run before, haven't won, but did start a grassroots org to do year-round base building called Columbus Stand Up. And then also work for my day job for a think tank that focuses on breaking up monopolies, American Economic Liberties Project. Very much, like Mike was saying, believe we have to be more aggressive on economic issues if we're going to turn the tide here. But to your question, Sunny, so, just to give folks, and because there are Ohio people on, if you all have different views than my takes, please put it in the chat, fact check me live. I don't mind about that at all. But here's my take of where things stand. Pretty much for I'm 42, whole adult life, the economic conditions of Ohioans have been going down. We have gotten the brunt of the whole globalization thing with manufacturing jobs disappearing, going overseas, the financial crisis being one of the ground zeros for foreclosures and people losing their homes and communities decimated. The endless wars. I mean, I know that was one of the earlier speakers was talking about just the impact there and loss of life, loss of a generation, traumatization of a generation in Ohio. And then the opioid crisis, I think, has been one of the, final death knells for a lot of communities throughout the state as we have navigated that. And so where that's left us is, the number one employer in Ohio is Walmart. And no disrespect, of course, to the people who are working there, but I think we all are aware of the conditions and how that's teeing you up for a stable life, having that be the primary source of employment. And then even though we have this reputation of being like a more affordable alternative to the coast, especially in a lot of the cities where any job growth is still taking place, then it has gotten very expensive relative to what it used to be. We're seeing this in Columbus, we're seeing it in Cincinnati, Cleveland, housing issue, Toledo even. And so anyway, I mentioned this because when we look at the political prospects of Ohio, right now, we have to be kind of real about the fact that the only places that are consistently voting for Democrats are these blue dots, those cities I mentioned with the addition of, I think I would add Dayton to that. And then a little bit of an aberration, Southeast Ohio with Athens, which if anyone is from Ohio or has been here, Athens is a very wonderful, special place. Not that representative of a lot of the other parts of the state, pretty progressive. And then otherwise, it's been all very solidly Republican victories, statewide. But I want to come back to something that was mentioned earlier around the rise of independent people who are identifying as independents. We're, an open primary state in the sense that you can show up and if you vote in a primary, that's your affiliation. And only about 2/3 of people have done that. So when you look at like our rate of people who are technically independent because they haven't participated in a primary, that's over 30%, almost 40% by some estimates. And so that kind of connects to some of the positive results we have seen recently statewide with ballot initiatives, where we passed a very, good reproductive rights ballot initiative that had independents showing up and supporting it. We passed a ballot initiative statewide to legalize marijuana. That also had independents show up and support it. That has been the pathway to any sort of victory since we've been, pretty much losing since the Obama years. And so, there's a big question mark, I think, for just the country, really, because we know Ohio does have, even though we've not been as much of a purple state lately, still a lot of national implications for just how representative the population is. And then particularly for those of us who are organizing, living in Ohio, like what do these independents care about? Is it that different from what some of the folks that maybe do align more consistently with traditional political parties care about? And this is where I would love to get input from those that are on, my thesis is that it's not actually that different. And in fact, the convergence of these individuals is only growing because we're starting to see so much frustration, even in the consistently blue dots, like a Columbus, among people who have always been those true blue Democrats that are starting to wake up to the fact that, hold up, the people that we thought were looking out for us, they're not doing that, just like I described with my own personal journey. And they are wanting to have more aggressive alternatives, people who are looking to disrupt the status quo. I'd make another, couple of points before I dig into what the races are this cycle, just to kind of set the stage of what I think, these independents care about and like issues that are going on. And I am going to mention that, Sandy, so I will get to that. But thank you for reminding me. I see her chat. We are also ground zero for some big national themes, but we have a local connection to. Energy, data centers, utility corruption. We have been ground zero since we had this whole HB6, $60 million biggest utility biggest corruption scandal in Ohio history a few years ago. We had suicides related to that, state legislators that went to federal prison. There's still prosecutions going on for energy executives. That was one of the recent wake-up calls that people are like, wait a second, what is going on here? And we are getting fleeced left and
Well,
right.
just a quick overview here. The utility company out of Toledo, out of Akron, First Energy, bribed the Speaker of the Ohio House, and out of all that came two suicides, one of whom I knew. And the Speaker of the House is now serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. Meanwhile, the nuclear plant continues to go on. And I was in the wind business in Northern Ohio. They totally killed that. And energy rates are through the roof in Ohio. So, and, having had personal experience with the Democratic Party in Ohio, I can say that there's no there. And, Morgan, if Harper, if we're going to go to Nathan Taylor also to talk about Ohio. And Alexandria, if you want to chime in from Ross' story, please do. But go ahead, Morgan, and we got 15 minutes before we got to jump out.
I'm just going to make a couple real quick points, and then yes, definitely want to hear from others. The other thing I would say we're ground zero for is this whole elite corruption, the Epstein class. I mean, I don't have to tell people who are here. I mean, Victoria's Secret, the whole theory that we're going to like reel these women in with promises of modeling careers, that was a Victoria's Secret Columbus-based company, just a ruse, whatever you want to call that, to reel them in and perpetuate that sex trafficking operation. And so, Les Wexner, who's associated with that, his name is all over Ohio State. There are now students that are organizing to cross his name out themselves at Ohio State because the university has not done that. And speaking of institutions that have shown their corruption, Ohio State, our largest public, land grant university in the state, now has recently had to get rid of the president because of his connections using his office to benefit a right-wing podcaster who had connections to our independent economic development agency that passes out tax incentives left and right. And so, this is what I would say. My thesis is this is the type of stuff that more and more people across Ohio, regardless of what party they voted for in the past, regardless of who their parents' political party is, regardless of what TV station they might still be watching or which streamer they, plug into, they are pissed off. And the party, the person and the people that will win the future in Ohio are those that recognize that and are ready to really rumble with that reality. And so
Right.
that's the question, though. I don't exactly know if this will be the cycle where that happens, but anyway, do you want me to do a quick overview of the races, Sonny, or go
Well,
to
let's. I think we got to jump on. Keep going here, Morgan. In general, I will say people have to understand that the whole Epstein situation originated in Central Ohio with Les Wexner, who I've heard a couple times. I had many students at Capital University in Columbus who worked for the Limited, and who swore up and down that Les Wexner was gay. But in this day and age, who knows? Morgan, you've been fabulous, so please stay with us. Nathan Taylor, did you want to jump in? Alexandria Jacobson, I hope you're taking notes for your next piece for Ross' story on the politics of Central Ohio, because this is, Epstein was in and out of Columbus, every other day, pretty much, soaking up Les Wexner's money. I mean, Jeffrey Epstein was totally financed by Les Wexner. Nathan Taylor, real quick, we've got 78 people with us, and we've got about 10 minutes to go before we go to Earth Day.
Yeah, I'll make this super simple. I think I was invited on once before to talk a little bit about Ohio with
yes, please.
Tammy. But some of the work I've been doing is with the Election Truth Alliance, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. My background's in cybersecurity and information systems. And I think the topic you guys were talking about before with Ohio and everything else is around making sure, the will of the voters is being met and that, votes are being cast correctly. And Ohio has come up because of some of the research we've been doing and putting out, looking at the infrastructure that we run our elections with. If you're a little familiar, Greg Palast's work about, removing voters, but we've been focusing more on who owns the companies that count our votes. Can we detect any problems with the counting of our votes in recent elections? And then, is there any other problems? And if you're familiar with Ohio, back in 2004, we had an example of a man in the middle attack with Spoon and Moore talking about people going in and compromising the vote counting systems in Ohio in 2004. And that was detected, and he put out some of his work. Well, the ETA has now started to raise some of the same concerns for recent elections, such as the 24 election. And so some of our work at this point, we've been looking at, we put out reports for 4 different swing states so far. Pennsylvania has been a big focus. And then now we've also been, ramping up to put out reports for Ohio, because Ohio uses the same voting systems as a majority of the U.S. So there's 2 major voting system brands that count almost all of our votes: mail-in, paper ballots, machine marked, doesn't matter. And that is those 2 major brands is ES&S, which is about 60% or so of the voting infrastructure, the vote counting computers. And then the other half is Liberty Vote Now, which was Dominion. And that's the other, whatever larger brand, 10 to 20%. And just to kind of wrap up the concerns we've been finding in Ohio and other places, I've actually been working with some people in Ohio pulling records. And I have a little visual for you I'll pull up for you. But the concern we've had now is we know these major voting systems have been targeted and have been compromised by what is pretty much now Trump-aligned officials from before the 24 election. Some examples of that, if you've been paying to the news recently, you had Coffee County, Georgia, where people went and actually got copies of the hard drives. You had Mesa County, Colorado. Tina Peters was involved. That's still, a legal case right now, potentially trying to impact her sentencing. And, they got the same access to the systems. And then Michigan as well was another place where they actually took the vote counting computers from the county, took them away, and were using them and doing testing. So I'll show you a very brief visual about some of the concerns. One of the methods we use to not only review the election results in a state such as Ohio, if you can see this, we use a very simple statistical analysis. This has not really been done in the US before. We're very afraid, it seems, to do this type of analysis, but this is based in Russia. So multiple experts. Here's an example of one. He's a physicist with a PhD in physics, and he put out a paper looking at Russian elections. Well, we said, well, let's take his method, very simple statistical method that looks at voting behavior, looks at polling locations, which we just use precincts in the US, and let's see if we're finding the same trends and problems in some of our 2024 election results. And that's where we actually found, mail-in shows far more normal human voting behavior, which is supposed to be this circle on the right here. This is what all of these experts say is more expected normal human voting behavior, no relationship between precincts of high turnout and any one candidate. And that's actually what we see in Pennsylvania.
And remember, we're on the radio, Nathan. And Nathan, your expertise is spectacular. As you'll recall, Ohio 2004 was Karl Rove's nuclear test ground, where they literally stole the election 100 different ways. And the Democratic Party, led by John Kerry, basically told us to take a hike. And, Bob Petrakis really uncovered a lot of that stuff. We wrote 6 or 7 books together about it. And you're at ground zero. We're going to go deeper dive into election protection at future calls. And I hope you and Morgan will stay with us for that because this is critically important. I still want to hear how the Hungarian people won an election over a guy like Orban, who was completely in charge of the election apparatus. We've got 77 people with us. We got 6 minutes to go. We're going to jump into Earth Day, but I hope Nathan and Morgan, you'll give us your pledge to come back and go into another deep dive on election protection. Because,
I'll kind of wrap up then.
Yeah, go ahead then.
No, you're fine. So the question we've highlighted, and I have a final visual for you. One moment. And this is to answer the question. Okay. Well, this is very based in Ohio. So the question we had is, if there's a problem with our systems, as you mentioned, can we detect it in the U.S.? Well, we have. That's kind of the point I've been highlighting is across the swing states, non-swing states, such as Florida and Ohio, we've seen behavior that isn't that normal human voting behavior. It almost seems like a algorithmic voting behavior, and we've flagged this. We've actually been investigating on the ground in both Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania. We've been to Pennsylvania. We have a lawsuit there, but we also have a few other places. So to summarize, and how this kind of fits into the bigger picture, and not only in the U.S. and outside the U.S., is if we're trusting our voting systems, which we know have been compromised at this point, and we know the voting behavior looks abnormal, well, how does Hungary run their elections? They hand count. their elections, by the way. They're not using voting systems
Do
like we are.
You say they hand count. Are they using mail-in ballots?
Well, so the distinction is, I believe a lot of their voting, they show up in person at polling locations and they submit hand-marked paper ballots, and they count them by hand. The U.S., we don't do
they
that.
digitally scan them?
From what we've seen, we haven't seen any suggestion they're digitally scanning them like we do in the U.S.
That's something. Now, next week, we're going to have John Brakey and Ken Bennett on from Arizona. So I hope you'll be with us, Nathan and Morgan and Alexandria, if you can, because we want to discuss. John Brakey is the pioneer of digitally scanning hand-marked paper ballots. And that is the system that we've been recommending, Nathan. So if you can come back next week with Morgan and discuss this, it'll be very important. Okay?
Sonny, can I just close out for 1 minute with a couple of things? Because I don't know that I can come next week. But so races for people to watch: Amy Acton v. Vivek Ramaswamy, both new candidates, though not totally new names. That is going to be very, very interesting. Brian Hambly v. Allison Russo for secretary. That one was for governor. Brian Hambly v. Allison Russo for secretary of state. Ohio Working Families Party has endorsed Brian Hambly, so check that out. Oncologist running.
Remember, we're nonpartisan here.
Yes. Okay. And then that is all I have to say. I did drop a link into a local effort that's just about good governance with the Columbus City Council, that connection to, if we're going to have blue dots turn out, then we have to actually have functional government at the local level. You can't just pop up and win statewide. So I wanted to bring people's attention to that.
Morgan, you've been great. Thank you. I hope you can come back next week, if not a week after. Well, a week after we won't be meeting, but 2 weeks or thereafter. Nathan, very quickly, I can give you 30 seconds to wrap, and then we'll go to Myla. But we're about to go to Earth Day. So maybe you can come back next week, especially to talk with John Brakey about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Would love the opportunity. Kind of takeaway here is, as we get closer to the next big elections, I think we need more candidates across the board to be aware of the concerns with our election systems and to have their eyes open to how we can, fix and better them as we go forward, which is important, is everyone should have their vote counted and counted correctly, independent of party. So that's important.
And I want to mention, as you mentioned that apparently Kamala Harris has raised the flag, the possibility of running again. She disappeared the day after the election, after people like you raised a huge number of questions about the 2024 election. Kamala Harris was nowhere to be seen for months and months and months. She basically did a John Kerry disappearance act after a election, Al Gore too, about which serious questions were raised. And so I think as a result of that, she will not be considered as a important candidate for president. We'll see. We've got 74 people with us. This has been spectacular. As the hour, we're going to switch over to environmental issues. By the way, Greg Palast will be joining us in this upcoming hour if you want to talk about energy and environmental issues. Morgan, we hope you'll stay with us as well. Alexandria, I don't know if you're still with us. But we do have 74 people. Myla Reeson, you're raising your hand, and then Steve Caruso, and we're going to switch over to the environmental issue. Howie Hawkins, good to see you. Go ahead, Myla.
Well, I do have a question for Morgan, and it kind of dovetails with both economics and the environmental issues. So maybe we can, if Morgan, if you can stick around, perhaps I can ask you the question. You can't stick around. I see you shaking your head. So
I'll drop my email in the chat. Feel free to email.
Yes, be in touch, Myla. Okay. We can have Morgan back, and hopefully we can raise the issue.
Well, when you return, Morgan, I have a question for you, and hopefully I'll be closer up in the queue.
Okay, Morgan, thank you for being with us. And we're about to go into a different mode. I'm going to do a new introduction. The next hour, we have 74 people with us. I hope you'll stay. For the next hour, we have Greg Palast. Kevin Kamps is with us, Howie Hawkins, some other great, Karl Grossman, I believe, some great people. We're going to do an hour show, which we are going to tape, which will be available as a Solartopia show on Earth Day. which is going to come out in 10 days. So, Steve, how do you want to break us here?
Just go ahead and spin it, man.
All right, this is what's called the Solartopian spin. Are you guys all ready? We've got 72 of us, which is a magic number. And I'm going to do an intro, and then we're going to go into a whole other hour. We're going to start with Howie Hawkins to talk about Solartopia and Earth Day. Okay. Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Sunny Wasserman. We're back here at Solartopia for a special edition of an Earth Day program, which is going to be broadcast and podcast through the Pacifica Radio Network, over 200 affiliates and 5 major stations, among many, many other outlets. We are going to be talking about Earth Day. Earth Day, which happened first on April 15th, 1970. Richard Nixon was president, remember him? The last guy to be, there were people demanded they leave the White House. Richard Nixon had no such thing as a sex scandal. Actually, a lot of us wish he had. But we are in the throes of an ecological crisis. We're in the throes of a war for oil, among so much else, and with a heavy nuclear dimension, not only with nuclear weapons, but also nuclear power plants. And this is a critical stage of our ecological development. And this is Earth Day. And we are the Solartopia show, which has been originating at KPFK in Los Angeles and Pacifica Network, and now being distributed throughout the Pacifica Network at pacificanetwork.org, among so much else. We are joined, for starters, with Howie Hawkins, a former presidential candidate from the Green Party, and we got Kevin Kamps with us, a tremendous nuclear expert. We got Greg Palast, the great Greg Palast, who has been known worldwide for his reporting on elections as well as on the environment. Karl Grossman and Ron Leonard will be joining us from New York State, as will Susan Shapiro and many, many others, to talk about the ins and outs, especially of energy policy and the catastrophe of this idea of building new nuclear plants, especially in New York and in California, as well as Michigan, where Kevin Kamps, a Kalamazoo native, is a great expert. So we're going to start, since we're broadcasting from the US and we're talking about Earth Day, we're going to start in Ukraine with Howie Hawkins. And 2 reasons. Howie and I go way back to the Stone or Stoned Age, however you want to refer to it, back in the 1970s. Howie is in Syracuse, New York, and he's a major player in the National Green Party, and has also struck up a unique and important and powerful relationship with the Green movement in Ukraine. Now, Ukraine, as we all know, has been under attack from Vladimir Putin and Russia in probably the first mass aggressive war of conquest in Europe since World War II, for God's sakes. And the war in Ukraine is, to a great extent, an energy war. It's also the first war that we've experienced where atomic power reactors have been attacked, to the extent that now the International Atomic Energy Agency has practically begged Vladimir Putin to stop shooting drones and missiles at atomic reactors. We've had 3 power plants, nuclear power plants in Ukraine that have been targeted already. Chernobyl, which is allegedly dead but still hot, and Howie, you can talk about that, has been hit by a drone, which was clearly a Russian drone, where the sarcophagus was punctured, which, Howie, you can talk about. Zaporizhia, with 6 reactors, has been targeted with drones and missiles, and another reactor at South Ukraine. Ukraine has 19 reactors, 4 dead, but nonetheless, this is the first instance in a war. The Israelis did take out an Iraqi reactor in 1980 or 81, I believe, and thankfully the reactor had not yet opened. They did kill a French technician with that attack, but it was the first instance I know where a missile has actually been aimed at an atomic reactor. But now it's become a huge issue. There are 400 atomic reactors worldwide. There are 94 in the United States. Howie, and now I'm going to go to Kevin Kamps, who's done some important research on nuclear reactor safety. But Howie, how relevant is it to our situation with nuclear power plants in the United States that Putin has targeted reactors in Ukraine? And how significant is the movement in Ukraine to go to 100% renewables?
Well, the movement for renewables is very significant. And in fact, Ukraine is now on a record pace to go to complete green power. And it's accelerated. And in one way, we have Vladimir Putin to thank for that, because he's been bombing all the energy infrastructure for 4 years and in an accelerating rate, particularly the last 2 years. So, last winter, Russia took out half of Ukraine's power capacity. So they destroyed 9 gigawatts of the 18 gigawatts power they had. And Ukraine has been rebuilding furiously. They've rebuilt already 4 gigawatts. That was reported on April 4th. And a lot of that's gone into repairing existing thermal and hydroelectric capacity, but a lot of it's also gone into distributed renewable generation and storage. So Ukraine's added over 1.5 gigawatts of new solar capacity. That was last year. I don't have a figure for this year, but they're building it now in the spring. They've built 0.5 gigawatt of battery storage in that period. They plan to build, and they're building right now, 7 gigawatts new wind power capacity. And their plan is to redouble their renewable capacity in the next 4 years.
Howie, real quickly, a gigawatt basically is 1,000 megawatts, which is the size, slightly smaller, but the thumbnail size of a nuclear power plant. I want to welcome Greg Palast with us, who also has some experience with renewable energy and nuclear in Ukraine. But no one else is talking about this, Howie, and it's really important that the idea that there's a green power movement in Ukraine has gotten zero press that I know of. So tell us more, please. We got 69 people with us.
Well, there's one group called Razum We Stand, and it's a campaign based in Ukraine to tighten fossil fuel sanctions on Russia and rebuild Ukraine on the basis of renewables. And, they had a struggle at first in the first couple of years of the war, because there was vested interests that wanted to stick with fossil fuels and maintain the nuclear fleet, but they say they're winning that argument. Now, the danger with the nukes is Russia's playing Russian roulette with those nukes. Mostly they're not hitting.
It's actually Chernobyl roulette, right, Howie? I mean, that's what we call it, Chernobyl roulette.
Okay, we can call it that. But what they've done is they've taken out substations that supply power to the cooling systems for these nukes. And the backup diesel generators keep them cool. But if they go out, you're just a few hours away from a Chernobyl-type meltdown and radiation pouring out all over Ukraine, and depending on how the wind goes, Russia itself or Europe. So Ukraine is now, as part of this rebuilding process, putting all their substations underground. And one of the reasons they're building for renewables, I mean, they did have a climate objectives, they adopted even before the war, but now it's a security issue, because wind and solar are distributed. They're not concentrated in a few big power plants. And you can build microgrids utilizing the distributed solar and wind, and they're more resilient. You can't take out the whole grid. There are a lot of grids you got to take out. So for the Ukrainians, this is a matter of security as well as clean energy.
Well, at some point, the Ukrainians were talking about building more nuclear plants, which struck me as the pinnacle of insanity. We're talking with Howie Hawkins, by the way. This is a special Earth Day broadcast coming to you over the Pacifica Network, among others. But Howie, are they serious? And what are they going to do with their old nuclear plants? And are they going to build new ones?
Well, the last report I got from Ola Savitsky with Razum We Stand is that the Ukrainian government realizes they can't afford nukes. They can build a lot more capacity with renewables than they can continuing with these nuclear projects that were already underway. And they're so broke anyway because of the war. So the nukes are not going forward. And the momentum now is toward renewables.
Wow, that's amazing. Kevin Kamps, take this to the U.S. now. Is this a security issue in the United States? Someone got to go to the great Greg Palast. But some security questions. Well, you've followed security at nuclear reactors in the United States for many, many years. There are 94 reactors in the United States, and Putin has really broken through the whatever barrier there was, whatever blood-brain barrier there's been, and has actually attacked commercial reactors. Is this something we need to be afraid of in the United States?
Don't take it from me, take it from the 9/11 Commission. Al-Qaeda considered attacking Indian Point near New York City. And when asked why they didn't, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said, because we did not want things to get out of hand, but we have not ruled out such attacks in the future. So that was September 11th of 2001. Another little incident that was documented was that an Al-Qaeda operative worked at multiple nuclear plants, not at a high level, but nonetheless worked in nuclear plants until he was caught. So security has been an issue in the United States forever, from the beginning. And, again, in the mid-1980s, Bennett Ramberg wrote the book on the threat, the risk of nuclear power plants being targeted as weapons for the enemy, domestic nuclear power plants. These are pre-deployed dirty bombs of massive scale. And unfortunately, as you said, Harvey, Ukraine has kind of been the first war where nuclear plants have been routinely on the front lines and even targeted directly, or as close to directly as we would want. We don't want them targeted at all. So just a friendly amendment, though, there have been research reactors attacked as acts of warfare. The United States attacked a Iraqi research reactor, and so did Israel. So this has happened decades ago, but it has happened. Research reactors are nothing to mess around with. They're smaller in size, but can result in massive releases of hazardous radioactivity. And something you asked me to look into, Harvey, amongst Trump's executive orders from last year, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is now taking action on them. And one of their actions that they just took is to essentially do away with security requirements on what are called sealed radioactive sources that are used with some regularity in industry, in medicine, in research. One time I read a report about a nuclear power plant in Canada called Bruce, and the amazing Dr. Gordon Thompson was looking at radioactivity getting out and also looking at dirty bomb potential if materials were stolen from that plant. And he put the attack at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto. And what shocked me the most was the small quantity of radioactive material required in a dirty bomb. That's what NRC is now flirting with, dirty bomb material with no security on it. And such a small amount of material packed with conventional explosives exploded in an urban setting like Toronto. Again, don't take it from me, take it from the Government Accountability Office of Congress. They're saying that a small quantity could result in not billions, but tens of billions of dollars of socioeconomic damage. And just to conclude my remarks, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is not concerned about the socioeconomic consequences. It's not a part of their regulation formulation. So the US has little to no security on nuclear power plants, on radioactive materials. We're just living on borrowed time. This notion of American exceptionalism. Bad things don't happen to us because we're Americans, because God loves us. We came darn close on 9/11. That was, it shouldn't be joked about, but we relied on the moral restraint of Al-Qaeda to protect us on 9/11 against an attack on Indian Point within 25 miles of the city limits of New York City.
It's kind of like the relying on the moral upstandingness of Jeffrey Epstein in a room full of teenagers. Oh my God. Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for your extraordinary work on this. I really appreciated you at the last minute making these doing this research. We've got Greg Palast with us. Greg, you
Yes.
there?
He's here. He doesn't
Yes.
have his camera on. Greg, you can turn your camera on when you're co-hosted. If
I
you can.
am okay.
And I think Greg, you just had your hair
Here.
done for this, so
I'll watch.
Let's see.
Greg,
I'm-
you have.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get this. Why is the video settings?
All right, well, listen, the video
It
is
should be
okay.
on the left bottom side, just a picture of a camera, and then you click the up arrow.
Yes,
where
it has an
cross-
X. It has a
Just click
slash.
on it,
Let-
and it'll
let's
come
just-
up. Just
Let's
click
just
on
go
the
ahead and
X.
talk, Greg. We know what you look like.
Well, anyway, let me try this. This is why is this not going
Okay,
on?
so
the
let's
video?
go. We have
You know-
Karl Grossman and Susan Shapiro with us.
Yeah,
Okay.
Susan Shapiro has joined us now, and she's waiting to be co-hosted so that she
Go
can.
ahead. Yes, please. Greg, you want to just talk? We know how great you look.
Well, yeah. Is there any way to get my video on? Why is my video camera not on? This is someone.
Well, how about
If there's an X through it on the lower left, all you have to do is click
Yeah,
on
it says
that
there's a
X
slash.
over the
There's a
just
slash
click
through the
over-
video.
Click on
There's
that slash.
Yes,
Just click
I
on
am.
that slash, and it's not doing anything.
Not
Okay.
doing a damn thing.
Well,
There
Greg,
we
let's
go.
hear- let's hear
There
from
we
you.
go. Wait, there we go.
There you
Okay.
are. All right, you're great, and you're wearing the same hat that you wore last time you were on. So
I've
tell us,
worn-
Greg, you have experience in Ukraine and, of course, in New York. First, tell us about your experience in Ukraine and how the Ukrainians could go 100% renewable, and then talk to us here.
Okay. Well, first I want to show you this. This is why I want the camera on. Can you see this?
Yep. What is
Okay.
that?
It's hard to see it with the reflection.
Okay.
But on December 5th, 1988, a federal jury in New York City found Long Island Lighting Company and the builder of the owner of the Shoreham nuclear plant and the builder of the Shoreham nuclear plant, Stone and Webster, found them guilty of racketeering and ordered them to pay $4.6 billion to the people of New York because they lied about the Shoreham nuclear plant and its cost. It was at that time the biggest jury award in American history for lying about the price of a nuclear power plant. And that's what I want to concentrate on. What I want to concentrate.
$4.6 billion. I think they turned
$4.6 billion.
That's with a B, and Karl Grossman is on with us.
Yes.
He got a piece of that, and I know
Yes.
you guys both built large estates in the Hamptons based on that settlement.
Well,
and then Trump took the remainder and built Trump Tower. But go ahead and tell us what happened with Shoreham and why it's important.
Well, the reason it's important, we're talking about safety, we're talking about clean energy, all that. No one gives a damn. What people care about is the price. Ask Mondani. Affordability is the issue. So we literally had a nuclear plant. It was first proposed in 1967 and would cost about $250 million. It took 20 years to build. 20 years later, that $250 million plant cost, are you ready? $20 billion. They literally had nearly 100-fold increase in the price. And the public went berserk because Long Island, the prices of electricity on Long Island to pay for that nuclear plant became the highest in the nation. And that's what people give a damn about. When the main thing you have to deal with when we're dealing with nuclear power, and for those who don't know me, Greg Palast, I was at the time the executive director of the New York State Commission on Science and Technology. And I was able, and I had testified several times as an expert witness on electric pricing all over the country. And here I was in a case for the state, Suffolk County, and the federal government, the Department of Justice, because I got all these inside documents stating this company knew exactly that there was no way that they were going to build a plant for $250 million or $2 billion or $3 billion or $4 billion or $5 billion or $6 billion or $7 billion. It was going to be 20 billion, and they knew it. They knew it, and it took 20 years. They were always, and so that's what got the public upset. And when we got that verdict, that plant was shut down. How? By the way, it ran one day. Can you imagine these criminals? Racketeering is a crime, and these criminals ran the plant one day to deliberately irradiate it, and then it was torn down after one day of operation, 20 billion down the hole. People care about their electric rates. They don't give a damn about some obscure radiation danger. It doesn't. The truth is, no matter what we think, that's what the public is concerned with. It's the lies. It is the endless lie that somehow nuclear power is too cheap to meter. And that line has gone through, and it's still alive today. You have greenies like the National Resources Defense Council, which is owned and controlled by the nuclear industry. You have so many green groups that are literally owned by the nuclear industry, and they keep talking about cheap nukes. They're going to create fusion energy. Yeah, in the year 2271, and they're going to create, and then they're going to create little mini nukes that they're going to put, that are going to come out of a General Motors auto plant. None of this is happening. The only nuke being rebuilt right now is TMI, 3 Mile Island 1. So you're talking about something which has a technology which is more than a half century old. It didn't work then. It doesn't work now. It's going to cost billions. And the only reason why it's being rebuilt is for the AI meisters like Bill Gates, the world's #1 booster of nuclear power, because they know that that plant will be charged to the public. Now, just so you know, I was hired as the chief expert for the Ohio Utility Commission and for Governor Dick Celeste of Ohio to look into refitting these plants. It's insane. It's billions and billions. And that's what we have to talk to the public about. You want to win over the public, give a damn about what the public gives a damn about, which is their electric prices. People are being eaten alive. And I got to tell you, I want to thank Harvey Wasserman. If you read one of my books, Vulture's Picnic, you'll meet a character named Harvey Angel. That's Harvey Wasserman. That's the name I gave him in this kind of noir nonfiction, pulp nonfiction, as I call it. And Harvey was able to get his hands on inside documents that if you read Vulture's Picnic, you'll see, where internally the builder of the last plant to be considered the South Texas project, which was going to be built by a company, Tokyo Electric Power. And the press release said Tokyo Electric Power built this because they are known as the safest nuclear plant constructor in the world. Right. Well, just after that Fukushima went down. And that's the same. And by the way, I agree. Probably Tokyo Electric is probably one of the safest utilities around, and they melted Fukushima.
Right.
And that's the safest. So what I want you to do is, oh yeah, there you go. There's Vulture's Picnic, which you can, go to gregpalast.com if you want a copy or something. But the thing is, it's a follow the money. Now, how do these plants explode in price? Let me just give you a quick thing. So when I was working for the Department of Justice on racketeering by the nuclear industry, and by the way, my case was not just about Shoreham. It was about the entire nuclear industry. So, for example, almost all nuclear plants have these backup diesel generators. They usually have 3 of them. So because you've got this, super hot, thousands of degrees of heat on these reactors, and God forbid the cooling water gets cut off. So you need diesel generators to keep the water flowing. Now, where do they get these diesel generators? Almost all of them are made by a company called Transamerica de Laval. And where did they get these? They literally took them off decommissioned cruise ships. So what you have is diesel generators from cruise ships, which are supposed to turn on in case of an emergency. Now, in the case of Shoreham, because I had government money and very, very few. In fact, there was no one in the United States who had the funds that we had. Suffolk County, one of my clients, is the richest county in the United States. We had the federal government, state government, and we made them test the diesel generators. And now understand, so if there's an emergency, you have to turn on this diesel generator, this Trans-America diesel generator. And basically, that's every nuclear plant in the United States and in the world. You got to turn on these diesel generators, and they have to snap on and work within 12 seconds. Well, that's, now understand, if you're a cruise ship owner and you have one of these diesel generators, it takes you several hours to slowly warm up the generator. In this case, the generator has to snap on within 12 seconds or the plant melts down. And they don't start it up slowly. What they have to do is turn it on, snap it on, and they have to make it, it's the equivalent of having a cruise ship that suddenly turns on its engine and has to leave the dock at about 300 miles an hour. So what happened was, when we actually tested it, we said, okay, you got to do a 24-hour test. And the first generator, they turned it on, and after an hour it went snap because it was just too much stress, and the shaft broke. The second was the second generator was turned on, snap, it went. Third generator turned on. That was the last of the 3 emergency generators, and it was gone within a couple hours. And we called those generators snap, crackle, and pop. And we presented that to a jury. But the other thing we presented to a jury, and this is very, very important, is that the engineers lied about it. They brought in consultants, and I've got their internal notes saying there is no way this thing's going to work. There's no way in an emergency these old cruise ship generators are going to turn on in seconds.
Right.
And in fact, and what they did was they buried the information. Now, does that make Long Island Lighting or Stone and Webster particularly evil? Well, I guess you could say it's evil, but it's not. Hang on. But this is the important thing. There isn't a single nuclear plant on this planet that was built honestly. You can't do it. You can't build a plant for less than $20 billion if you want to make it even close to safe. And these plants have been, they are basically, it's about enriching a few companies. And for the most part, these plants that they're talking about building will never be built, but it's a good way for this dinosaur industry to make a few $1 billion as it heads off into the sunset. So it was a complete lie, and the jury caught on to it. And the issue is not that it was unsafe. The issue for the jury was, did they lie about it to get money from the public? Because they said, oh, this plant is safe and it will be done next year. All we have to do is spend another $1 billion and it will be done. Well, one thing, the standing joke was that the Shore plant is going to be opened in a year for another $1 billion. And they kept that going for more than a decade. And the jury got onto them because I was able to get the internal documents. And understand, it's not just that one plant. I worked with, I think, about 20 attorneys generals and utility commissions. I'm an economist by training, and I was the expert witness and investigator. You can tell by my hat, I'm an investigator. So the important thing, if you want to talk about nuclear power, you better talk about the money. Always follow the money. It wasn't just those 3. It wasn't just the snap, crackle, and pop generators. And I saw at Fukushima.
Okay.
You know, that's very important. So the documents I got from insiders who gave information to Harvey that came to me was that the Southwest Nuclear, South Texas Nuclear Project, which is the last project being designed, was going to cost, according to the builder Toshiba and to Tokyo Electric Power, is going to cost $20 billion, and they hid that from the regulators. And that's the trick. The only reason why we have nuclear power even on the agenda, understand this, and I hate to say it, one of the few politicians in America that understands this is Donald Trump, who said, look, if you're going to build these plants, you don't charge the public. You pay for it. You want to build a nuclear plant? Go ahead, build yourself a nuclear plant and you pay for it. Bill Gates and none of these characters who are pushing nuclear power, not one of them will say, I'll build the plant at my expense and it'll be too cheap to meter, because they know that that's complete horseshit. You want to defeat nuclear power. It's about the cost. And that is the issue. And these guys are trying to sell us that as some type of cheap source of power.
Right,
that's
exactly.
a lie. We've proved it. We've got a jury verdict. And the jury verdict was not just about the Shoreham plant. It was about the entire nuclear industry, which is nothing but an industry based on lies and fraud and sometimes violence against whistleblowers who might decide that that they aren't going to participate in this conspiracy and crime.
Well, thank you, Greg, and we hope you're safe. Keep your hat on, and and you know that is an epic story. Karl Grossman's with us. He was
yes. Hey, Karl.
And Myla Reeson, do you want to jump in, and then we'll go to Karl, and then to Susan Shapiro, who are both in New York.
Yes, I do want to jump in, and I've got to say we could fill several hours with everything that Greg Palast has to report on. But we also have some amazing people who can also speak to these issues. Susan Shapiro and Karl Grossman and Ron Leonard, and we want to hear from all of them. And I want to underscore something you said, Greg, and I think that it's really true that people, especially in the Democratic Party, sat up and paid attention when Mamdani ran on the affordability issue. And now it has become the mantra of the Democratic Party. Everybody's talking about affordability, including Kathy Hochul. And I was really kind of alarmed and disappointed to learn that Zoran Mamdani is embracing nuclear power in the state of New York, as is Kathy Hochul. And so there's a real disconnect. On the one hand, they talk about affordability, and on the other hand, they talk about embracing nuclear power, and the two are in conflict with one another. And I think that Susan Shapiro, if I might call on you, I think that Susan Shapiro can really speak to this issue of this disconnect between the cost and the greenwashing or of nuclear power. Affordability washing, I would say.
Well, thank you for having me on. And the lies that Greg's talking about continue. The lie today, the fraud today, is the lie that in New York State and in other states, they're claiming nuclear is green. They're greenwashing nuclear. They're claiming under zero emissions credits that they're funding in New York State. They've given.
But actually, Susan, I have to say, in The Simpsons, the nuclear fuel is green. But that, other than that, you know, there's nothing environmental about it. So
yeah, there's nothing.
Go ahead.
They're totally not green, but they've greenwashed them, and a lot of environmentalists and a lot of environmental groups, sadly, are promoting nuclear as a solution to climate change, which it's not, which is a whole other avenue that we could discuss. But staying with the money and what's going on with the politics in New York State is New York State already spent in our clean energy program $7.6 billion on supporting nuclear. And at the same time, they gave only $1 billion to all renewables. And then they turned around and said, well, why aren't renewables online fast enough? Clearly, that's why. They didn't even spend the $1 billion on renewables. They allocated it, but it wasn't spent. And now they just recently, the Public Service Commission gave nuclear another $33 billion. And Kathy Hochul, in the meantime, is promoting opening 5 new reactors. And we have the Department of the Secretary of Energy, Wright, and Congressman Lawler announcing that they're going to reopen Indian Point. So we're talking about well over $100 billion additionally to the $40 billion already spent in New York State. That's going to absolutely increase everybody's electricity bills. And it's based on a fraud to the public, because they're doing it through what they call zero emissions credits. Nuclear is not zero emissions in any sense of the word. It's not carbon free, and it's not zero emissions. And as long as we're not talking about that, they're promoting that. And it's been really a challenge of promoting it. Right now, we're pushing for a moratorium in New York State for at least 2 years to look at the costs, because they approved this $33 billion and the $100 billion without doing any cost evaluation. There's no cost study done at all. It's truly
mind-boggling. I mean,
Yeah.
really, all over the country, California as well. California, they're talking about prolonging the operation at Diablo Canyon. Nobody has done a cost analysis
There's no cost
versus
analysis.
renewables. Renewables are a third the cost.
And they also come online so much faster. And, this push, because they're claiming we need nuclear for AI. That is another fraud. The answer to AI is not nuclear. The answer to AI is a combination of geothermal, regular geothermal, which cools the computers, and deep geothermal, which provides heat to make electricity, boil water to make electricity, and solar power. And they'll come online very quickly. Meta and Microsoft have already built 2 AI centers on geothermal. So this is such a fraud on the public that they're pushing nuclear as a solution to climate change. And then the other issue that I think we really need to think about is there going to be reprocessing. That's the direction everyone's going in. They're looking at these nuclear sites with all this waste. There's no solution to nuclear waste. So they're turning around and saying, okay, we have these very dirty sites. We have all this waste. We're going to start reprocessing. And they're pushing really hard for reprocessing. Reprocessing has been blocked in the United States for all these years because of nuclear proliferation, which, is what we're claiming is happening in the Mideast. And we're going to be doing it ourselves. But also, it's also been not allowed because of the amount of pollution it creates. It doesn't make less pollution. It makes another whole other pollution stream. Besides the spent fuel, it creates this liquid radioactive waste that we have no solution to deal with. And it also releases radioactive isotopes that increase climate change, activate climate change, accelerate climate change. So this whole thing is a fraud on the public. So I totally agree with Greg. And there was a case in the 80s about false advertisement that was won by the nuclear industry, but was not followed through. And maybe that's what we need to be talking about, is the false advertisement of nuclear today on the public. And maybe along with the case from the 80s that you won, Greg, maybe we need to think about how we reframe this conversation today.
And as Vladimir Putin has shown in Ukraine, these reactors are really vulnerable. I mean, a $500 drone from Walmart could, result by taking out Diablo Canyon or Indian Point. God knows, I don't even want to get in there.
Well,
Karl,
as Kevin said, after 9/11, we were just lucky because Al-Qaeda decided
Right.
not to hit, Indian Point. They had the maps in their caves. And after 9/11, they had a no-fly zone over Yankee Stadium, but there's no no-fly zone over Indian Point to this day. Any drone could take it out, or any other reactor in the country, with all the waste.
It's unbelievable. And Karl Grossman, who's been with Greg and Susan in New York. We also have Ron Leonard with us. He'll be after Karl. I mean, Karl, do you want to comment on how Shoreham went down and what the situation in New York is now? This is a special Earth Day broadcast from Solartopia, and we're honored to have all these incredible guests. Then Ron Leonard, and we'll go back to Howie Hawkins and Kevin Kamps. And thank you, Myla, for jumping in. We appreciate that. Karl,
On
go
the
ahead.
end of Shoreham, and it was not just Shoreham, the Long Island Lighting Company was involved in a plan to build 7 to 11 nuclear power plants on Long Island. But what happened is because of grassroots opposition and certain government opposition, like Greg mentioned, Suffolk County, and also at that point, New York State, that scheme was stopped. And Shoreham, that was constructed, just like what Greg said, they turned the power on to irradiate it. The Long Island Lighting Company did, thinking that maybe that will prevent them having the plant closed, because it would be so much more expensive because it had become irradiated.
Yep.
Right now, meanwhile, despite the 3 Mile Island disaster, despite the Fukushima disaster, despite Chernobyl, there's this push. The nuclear industry calls it a nuclear renaissance to build big and small nuclear plants. And with the nuclear industry is, well, especially Donald Trump, and he had now a financial interest in nuclear power. Last year, Trump's family's media company merged with TAE Technologies, a nuclear fusion operation out of California. Meanwhile, Trump is leading the it's really deregulation, weakening nuclear safety regulations, expediting licensing and so forth. But it's not just Trump. There's a clutch, including many Democratic governors. It's been mentioned that Kathy Hochul, who's the governor of New York, is pushing nuclear now. And it's not just pushing it slightly. What Kathy Hochul announced, give you exactly her words last year. I'm the first Democratic governor of New York in a generation to say to nuclear, I'm embracing this, and my state will embrace this. So it's a real a cabal that has taken a big swallow, a big drink of the nuclear Kool-Aid acid, and would push nuclear to a fairly well.
Yeah, fairly well for all of us. And
Sonny?
and Gavin Newsom, not only the governor of California is leaving, thankfully, the Gavin Newsom has not only embraced continued operations at Diablo Canyon, where there was a phase-out plan from Jerry Brown in 2018 that gave us an orderly shutdown at Diablo Canyon. He's been vigorously assaulting the renewable energy industry, which is just insane. Lynn Feinerman in New York, and then you're in California, and then we'll go to Ron Leonard, and we'll go back to Greg.
Thank you. Sorry, I just wanted
And
to
Howie
ask
and Kevin.
Susan Shapiro a question. After Mamdani visited the White House, he was said to have been questioned about nuclear energy, and he said he was interested in it. Is there any indication that Mamdani's going to get on that evil bandwagon?
I don't know, honestly, enough about where he stands on it. I've heard he said he was interested. I haven't heard him come out and support it directly. I'd be really shocked if he does, given
He did
that
in the debate with Cuomo.
Excuse me?
He did in the debate with
He
Cuomo
did with the debate with Cuomo.
in
Okay.
October.
Well, Cuomo, as we all know, works for the nuclear industry now. You know, so the whole problem we
Mamdani
have
didn't challenge
is we
Cuomo
have
on that.
nuclear Democrats. I call them Trump Democrats that are supporting Trump's policy on nuclear and on energy, basically. Kathy Hochul is destroying, she wants to get rid of the entire clean energy standard in New York State. She's absolutely going against the legislature. And these Democrats claiming to be with Democratic policies are really overrunning what the public wants. The public doesn't want this. We know this because 450,000 people signed a petition to stop the dumping of tritium into the Hudson River in a period of like 6 weeks. It was really rapid to get that many people to sign any petition. It forced her to sign that bill. It's being litigated now, of course, by Holtec. But, you know, it's really a problem. I mean, we have to get to Mamdani and get him on the right side of this issue.
Well,
You know,
hopefully this special Earth Day broadcast will help. Ron Leonard is also in New York, very close to the renewable side. And Ron, what's Kathy Hochul and the rest of them doing to the greenification of New York?
I love the idea that it has something to do with the Renaissance, because I sort of remember what just came before the Renaissance. It was, oh yeah, the Black Plague. I think that had something to do with it.
Right. Well, the Renaissance had David standing naked, you know, up near Florence. So maybe that'll happen in New York as well.
And Greg, good to see you again. I haven't seen you in 10 years. Last time I saw you was in New Paltz, but I know he knows about Long Island because he has Southold in his history.
Yes.
But the bottom line really is the most hated corporation in the entire United States at that time was LIPA, the power company that birthed this horrible disaster in Long Island and put the people in Long Island in debt for decades. And that corruption still continues forward. I think we still owe millions of dollars on that power plant. Now, whether they ever open up Indian Point is another joke, but I sort of know a little bit about New York because I started my business in New York, and we were responsible for about 2 gigawatts of power plants in the 1980s. We were independent power producers, and that's what Greg was talking about. We built power plants with our money with the promise that we had a contract, and if we turned them on, that the utility would pay us a fixed price for the energy. Now, I challenge any utility to do that with a nuclear power plant, present day or future mini nuclear power plants. It's just not going to happen. Conversely, so, if we want to do that with renewable energy, solar, wind, whatever, that's a good deal. We'll be happy to fulfill the needs of people's clean energy that will be given to them at a reasonable cost. It's not going to increase in cost every month like the utility costs are increasing in New York. And we can rely on the simple fact that we're not going to have outages, as many outages we have right now, because we're distributing the physical locations of power and relying on simple engineering to make it functional. And that's what we don't have right now. We have a grid in New York State that's on average 50 years old, especially on Long Island. The newest power plant on Long Island is over 20 years old. I know that because my friend was the money behind that power plant. Lastly, we should probably just talk a little bit about why we want to switch to something so crazy like, I don't know, solar energy. Well, solar energy was not invented in 1951 like we all thought in Bell Labs. It was actually invented in Manhattan in the 1800s. There was this guy who put up a solar electric power plant on the roof of his house in Manhattan, and he did it with battery system. And New York really is the mother of energy projects, and we should be able to take mom out to dinner and congratulate her for doing the right thing back then, but we're not doing the right thing now for ratepayers, and we really need to understand ratepayers are up in arms, and it's going to hit back in the politicians on the day that they go to vote.
Well, the great news is that we do have renewable energy technology, thanks to Ron Leonard and others, that is capable of completely powering the country. We had a deal in 2018 with Jerry Brown, then the governor of California, to phase out the 2 reactors at Diablo Canyon, aptly named, and phase in 100% renewables. We could have done it. And people say, oh, California has the highest electric rates in the continental United States, a big race with New York, I guess. And yet the reason that is because we have nuclear plants in California and we have nuclear plants in New York. Myla, you want to jump in, and then we'll go to Howie Hawkins, Kevin Kamps, and then back to Greg Palast.
I do, and also if Kevin's cell phone can be unmuted, that would be really helpful.
Okay, go ahead.
And let me just say that I had an opportunity to have a brief conversation with Congresswoman, the great Congresswoman from California, Maxine Waters, a couple of days ago, exactly addressing the question of why so many prominent Democrats in the Democratic Party, obviously that's redundant, are supporting subsidizing nuclear power and promoting, subsidizing it, expanding it. And basically, Maxine said, follow the money. She said that it's hard for her to understand and wrap her head around the fact that we had already learned as a society long ago about how dangerous nuclear power is, and yet this is now a renewed conversation, and that many Democratic leaders are in fact supporting the idea of subsidizing and promoting nuclear power. And among them, I've got to say, are some Democratic rock stars like Sheldon Whitehouse, The extraordinary senator from, I believe, Connecticut, who went down to Seacott and rescued Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Chris Von Hollen, Sheldon, excuse me, let me continue here. Sheldon Whitehouse, Gretchen Whitmer, oh, I said Sheldon Whitehouse, Senator Mark Kelly, the astronaut from Arizona, Ruben Gallego. Here in California, we're faced with Governor Gavin Newsom, who would love to be president of the United States.
God help us.
Who really just stabbed us in the back over the continued operation of the very dangerous Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. I can go on and on in terms of the list. Let me just give you a few more names. Martin Heinrich, the senator from New Mexico, Ron Wyden from Oregon, Cory Booker from New Jersey, Tom Caper from Delaware. They are all of them promoting nuclear power. And as Maxine Waters says, the only explanation that she can come up with is that there's some kind of money involved. Why else?
Well, why else indeed, and why, God help us going forward. From all the way in Ukraine, Howie Hawkins, what are the prospects of Ukraine going on 100% renewable versus a nuclear plant being taken out by Putin?
Well, it's hard to put odds on that. I know Ukraine's doing the best it can to go renewable, and Putin's doing the best he can to destroy Ukraine. Whether he'll continue to target substations or nukes directly remains to be seen. But what I've been thinking about, I live in New York too. And I think Greg Palast is right. The nuclear industry is crooked as hell, and so are the politicians that buy us. I mean, $33 billion to keep 4 nukes in upstate New York that are unprofitable going is corruption. You know, they're making us ratepayers pay the nuclear industry or the owners of those plants. And then they want to build Holcomb wants to build 5 gigawatts of nuclear power. At 1 gigawatt plant, it's about $15 billion the way they price it. Usually ends up about $30 billion. So you're talking about $75 to $150 billion. That's why I think in New York, we may not stop the subsidies that have been going on since Cuomo, but I think we can stop the new nukes because of that. And, you know, Holcomb was the appointment of Cuomo, who was crooked as hell. He set up a public corruption commission called the Moreland Commission. And as soon as it started looking at his own people, he shut it down. And one of his own people turned out to be Joe Percoco, his campaign manager, who was caught for bribery and went to jail for it. So that's what we're up against. But I think that's the message we got to take to the people. You know, don't be a sucker. Don't get, you know, defrauded and played by the nuclear industry and their politicians. And I think on that basis, we can win it. Now, we got an election coming up, and there's not going to be an anti-nuclear candidate in it. The Green Party would run, but Cuomo got the election law changed so that it's 3 times harder to get on the ballot in New York for governor than it is in Putin's Russia to be a governor of an oblast or a republic. Here it's 45,000 signatures in 42 days. In Russia, it's 15,000 signatures, a third of the signatures in 45 days, 3 more days. So that, you know, we were the only state in the union that only had Trump and Harris on the ballot for president. So that's what we're up against. Well,
we're also up against billions
democracy.
Thank you for Howie, and thank you for continuing. We're not only up against the money, but Kevin Kamps, we're also up against the security of these atomic reactors. We're apparently in a war, apparently to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And meanwhile, I have 94 pre-deployed weapons of nuclear mass destruction. Can you give us a minute or two on that? And then we'll go to Greg.
I think underreported, underappreciated aspect of Trump's pro-nuclear power push is that part and parcel of it is high assay, low enriched uranium as a fuel source for these so-called modular reactors. That's borderline bomb grade.
Okay, Kevin, you're breaking up on us.
35. And he's also wanting to get away plutonium, plutonium 239.
Kevin, you're breaking up on us. Can you there? Go ahead, try again now. Kevin Kamps, can you hear me?
Trump's trying to give away plutonium-239 for free for fuel for nuclear power plants. These are huge proliferation risks. Someone mentioned earlier reprocessing. I think it was Susan. That's being pushed. These are huge nuclear weapons proliferation risks that are being pushed by the Trump administration and the US nuclear industry, who wants to export this stuff overseas. And the last thing I'll say is that that proposal to deploy 20 small modular reactors in Ukraine, that's Holtec International. And another unreported aspect of the current war is that Chernobyl was almost another Chernobyl because Holtec neglected the fuel waste, the high level waste at Chernobyl. Electricity was lost to the cooling pumps in the pools, and it almost went up in flames. The only saving grace was the fuel had cooled for 20 years. So the fuse was very long, but it was burning. And thankfully, electricity was restored to the cooling pumps before a second Chernobyl erupted at Chernobyl. And of course, a third Chernobyl at Chernobyl was the drone attack. So now the sarcophagus is structurally not able to do its job. So if anything happens at Chernobyl with Unit 4, that'll be another Chernobyl.
God help us. Well, and here we are in a war in Iran, allegedly to keep the Iranians from getting nuclear power, a nuclear weapon. And here we've got 94 pre-deployed nuclear weapons of mass destruction in the United States, while the Trump regime is killing any funding for security at nuclear power plants. Greg Palast, give us a couple minutes, please, on all this Michigas, if you would. That's a technical.
Follow the money, follow the bills. Americans don't want to pay these prices, and no one should. It's the idea that nuclear is cheap is a lie. You can't build a nuclear plant which comes close to safety for less than $20 billion. Let me go back, for example, to Shoreham, and which is I got a hold of the notebooks of an engineer named Robert Wiesel, which I put in front of the federal court. And he was saying that the Shoreham plant could not meet seismic qualification. What does that mean? It means if someone backs a truck into the containment building, or you get a strike from some terrorists or whatever, it happens, anything that shakes the building, he said all the panels, the control panels, will fall off the wall.
Yeah, and the same will happen at Diablo Canyon in California.
Yes, and so what happened is that Wiesel was told by the corporation chieftains, you change your report. Well, I got this original report, and they literally changed the wording. And I'm telling you, again, this is in federal court before a jury. Okay. His report said this plant does not meet seismic qualification. The report sent to the government said this meets seismic qualification. They literally took out the word "not" out of his report.
Right.
And now why does that matter?
Well, Greg, it matters because
wait, hang on, Harvey.
Okay, well,
it doesn't matter because of safety. Yeah, it's unsafe. The reason they didn't. It's not like they decided, oh, we're going to fry Long Island. They just knew that to fix it would cost about $1.5 billion. Right. They know that safety costs money. You have a choice. You have a cheap nuclear plant that can produce something like what they consider cheap electricity. If you don't cost $1 billion, if you don't include the billions of dollars it costs to build these things. But it's about the money. And if you want to win this battle, it has to be about what this is going to cost you. You have to beat that bullshit that's left over from 60 years ago that nuclear power is too cheap to meter. I'm an economist. If it were true, I'd say, okay, but it is not true. It's a complete lie. The Fukushima plant, for example, said, it was all unexpected that they were not going that. How could this have happened? They didn't expect a 9.5 per.
Well, we did actually. I marched in Tokyo with thousands of people, and everybody warned what was going to happen and happen.
Well, the truth is that Tokyo Electric Power was told to build your plant to a certain specification. They don't use the Richter scale. That's
Okay.
just for television. It's called Galileos. And they're supposed to be able to withstand 55 Galileos of movement. And they didn't, because the only way you can do that, the only way a nuclear plant can be built safely is to lie. And why do they lie? Not because they want to
Because
fry
they
you.
can't be built safely.
They don't want to, because they don't want to spend the money.
And there's no way to spend money. Right. So Greg Palast, thank you very much. 100% on target. I will say that there was also an earthquake report done at Diablo Canyon by Dr. Michael Peck, and the NRC deep sixth that as well. Thanks, Greg Palast. We're pretty close to the end here. Real quick, Susan Shapiro, Karl Grossman, Ron Leonard, and then we got to rock and roll. Susan, go ahead, please. Susan Shapiro.
Yeah, we have to call throughout the country for a moratorium on any new nuclear money being spent for the financial reasons and because it increases climate change. And we have to disabuse this belief that it's good for climate change. Nuclear, in a time of climate change, is the most unreliable source of energy.
You got that. Very good. Thank you, Susan Shapiro. Karl Grossman, Ron Leonard, we're going to wrap. Karl, please.
As I said, a grassroots effort coupled with a government action stopped nuclear power on Long Island. Long Island is now nuclear power free. The same thing has to happen on a national level. And I urge people to get involved with, and there are great organizations fighting nuclear, the Nuclear Information and Resource Service, a bunch of, just Google and get involved, get active. So like the old motto said, so we're not radioactive tomorrow.
Exactly. Just remember one thing, the myth that we can't defeat this industry is promoted by the industry itself. Richard Nixon in 1974 said there will be 1,000 atomic reactors in the United States by the year 2000. In the year 2000, there are 104. We're down to 94, and it's going to continue to drop. You get the last word here, Ron Leonard, please. Thank you.
I think the last word has to be corruption. And the corruption really has to do with the Indian Point joke titled The Whole Nine Yards. The Whole Nine Yards refers to the cement truck that was on the inside of the fence in Indian Point, and suddenly a crowd was standing there and a shadow passed over their heads, and they look outside the fence and the whole 9 yards was on the other side of the fence driving away, and they never saw it again.
Oh, there you go. This has been a special Earth Day edition of the Solartopia show, broadcast nationwide and everywhere in the world as well, including Ukraine. Thank you, Howie Hawkins, Kevin Kamps, Susan Shapiro, Ron Leonard, Greg Palast, Karl Grossman, Myla. It's been a spectacular event here. Thank you for engineering, Steve Caruso, Mike Hirsch helping with us, and Gary Scott at KPFK. We are really grateful to all of this, and we will shut nuclear power. Kevin Kamps, thank you especially for underscoring the safety issues that we're seeing with terrifying importance in Ukraine, thanks to Vladimir Putin. Who knew that ultimately Vladimir Putin would lead the movement against nuclear power? Thank you, everybody. This has been Earth Day. We hope we survive to another Earth Day sooner rather than later.
Harvey, I just have to say that I want to wish everybody a happy Earth Day, and we cannot leave out Mothers for Peace here in California doing yeoman's work to stop and shut down the very dangerous Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant.
Thank you, Myla, for your work on all this as well. So no nukes, everybody. I'm going to cease, and then we'll recontinue. We're going to go for another 16 minutes. This was an amazing session, everybody. I want to get the transcript, Steve, and thank you, PRN, for putting this out on your network, Progressive Radio Network out of New York. And let's just hope that it helps us stop these insane reactors. And Greg's right. We got to follow the money. We got to follow the danger. We got to do all this at once. And Greg, thank you for showing up in your hat. We appreciate it always. You're the only guy that shows up to our broadcast in a yarmulke. Anyway, we got that. We got another 10 minutes we can go before Steve Caruso goes, and we all go and toke up. Nicole Ung, we still have 46 people with us, by the way. Nicole Ung, do you want
Hi.
to say a word?
Hi, yes. I'm not no nuclear, a technician or anything like that. But last night I happened to have followed a story about the fusion engineer that got shot. And then like within 2 days or the next days, um, Donald Trump Jr., announced his fusion company with a TAE energy. So it's touted that fusion energy does not create. Let me read that. The stakes of the race to fusion are dramatic. Commercial fusion has the potential to deliver nearly unlimited energy by replicating the physics that power the sun using abundant fuel sources and generating no radioactive waste, unlike fission reactors. Is that is that true? Is that a lie?
Nicole,
I know an
Fairy
engineer.
tales may come true.
Yeah.
It will happen to you.
I know an
If
engineer
you've got
who has
nukes at heart.
started
Yeah,
working in
we've
that
been waiting for
70
just
years
so you
ago.
know, for 70 years. We've
Exactly.
been hearing that fusion power is going to create this free nuclear energy. Ask Isaac Newton. If he were alive today, he would say, listen, here's a problem. It's called, I have a law called the second law of thermodynamics, and these guys are full of shit.
And
Yeah,
also
and
the
you
amount
know,
of heat,
Nicole,
that fission causes. Fission is nuclear. It creates an enormous amount of heat waste that we have never calculated or considered. But fission is so much hotter. So let's just talk about heating up the planet. Fusion.
How do you cool a planet with a technology that burns at 100 million
Right.
degrees
It's insane.
Fahrenheit? And
Yeah.
Nicole, you got to be careful because the last person who read that statement out loud turned into a pumpkin. So you need to see
also Nicole,
Yes.
consider the hydrogen bomb. That works with fusion. The atomic bomb works with fission. The hydrogen bomb is not exactly clean.
I see. Okay.
No, and then
We already got a fusion plant. It's called the sun. Solar power, wind power, renewables, already powered by a fusion plant, safely far away.
Exactly
Yes.
right. Exactly
But
right.
I'm including in here the article because Microsoft is supposed to have one that is going to come on into
100 years.
no
Any
no
day
in,
now.
in 2028.
Yeah.
If Microsoft will pay for it,
Yeah,
as opposed to
AI.
loading it into the rate base, then then I'll listen to them. But at the moment, Microsoft is not saying we'll pay for it. They're saying it's so cheap, you should pay for it. No, we don't pay for it. If Microsoft wants to build a fusion nuclear plant, go right ahead. No such thing exists. I was just listening to a podcast from the 1990s saying that fusion power is just around the corner.
Yep.
Okay, when we get around the corner, you tell me and you pay for it. You guys want to run your AI programs? You guys want to do cryptocurrency? You pay for that fusion power, and they won't because they know it's bullshit from beginning to end. It's complete, absolute, total bullshit.
Microsoft can't even keep their Windows running.
Steve Caruso, you want to jump in, Steve?
Yeah. Got to watch for swearing on the show, by the way. But a lot going on there. A lot of comments I had passing through, and the energy issue obviously being the nuclear thing that's going on in Pikening is one of them, and they're getting ready to build a 10 gigawatt power plant down there, and then also the SMRs that are going in. and they're going to be refining and processing nuclear fuel along with a 10 gigawatt data center going in that area. So they're all guns a-blazing, all focused on Piketon and how that's going to pan out. It's either going to be an incredibly huge disaster or it's just not going to happen at all. And I'm hoping the latter. Thanks.
We are seeing that the AI centers are starting to look at using this weird fusion power plant. It's called the Sun, and they're actually talking about locating the AI plants in space so they can take care of the energy needs by solar power. So worlds has gone strange, but
well, that would cut down their cooling needs as well.
That's also the case, yes.
So, I mean, but I've seen a few of the pictures of these so-called data centers or AI centers with these giant one-story warehouses that do not have solar panels on the roof. So maybe, Ron, you could go in there and make a sales pitch.
We'll take care of it.
The thing with crypto is that they don't have labor backing it up. It's just made out of thin air. At least with money, you could think that somebody's doing something somewhere instead of a bunch of non-traceable chain of custody electrons doing whatever they want to do. That's just absolutely, it's like the tulipomania in Holland. And people just overpriced, overvalued tulips. Here we are back at the same old,
Well, I think the next major nuclear plant that they want to build for crypto is going to be named after Bernie Madoff. So that'll be pretty appropriate. Anyway, this was a fabulous session, you guys. Thank you so much for everybody participating. It will be edited by a KPFK technician, and it'll be out on the network, hopefully available by the end of the week. I'll send you everybody a link. And Karl and I, by the way, have a piece up at freepress.org. Thank you, Steve and Pete, for posting it. Which Steve, if you want to flash the link again to our piece that's up today, me and Karl there, that'd be great. And Greg, you're coming over for dinner, so we got to talk about ordering from. Anybody else want to come over for dinner here in LA with me and Greg? We're going to have Indian food.
Indian, like Indian Point.
Yeah,
Indian
Point food. That's right. It's takeout from Indian Point.
Did you invite Tatanka?
Yeah.
Come on.
Tatanka's coming here on Thursday.
All right.
So we haven't. I want to congratulate Tatanka Bricka, by the way. I know this is going to sound obscure, but Tatanka Bricka just ran the sanest KPFK board meeting in the history of the Pacifica Radio Network. We actually went for a flat hour and a half, had only one psychotic episode, which he cut off at the root. And we actually had a productive, a cordial, and not
in the peace pipe. What was in the peace pipe?
No. He had electric Kool-Aid.
Truly an amazing, as
Myla
Myla can attest, it was a truly amazing accomplishment, dating back, by the way, to a stolen election that has been, that has cost us 5 years of hard labor. But we now actually have a functional, I believe, I shouldn't say it, I hope I don't curse it.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood, a functional Pacifica network with a sane ED, a sane
We are
national
still recording
board.
and live.